Hello, everybody. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. We have a lot to talk about, as always. Sports, it's always happening. This Sunday and Saturday, a lot of things happen. Separation Saturday in college football. We're going to talk about it. We are going to talk about it. And I'm sure many of you have heard by now, especially in the news report at the top of the hour, the University of Missouri president has stepped down. And it's the story that hijacked all the other stories today. I wanted to talk about TCU and how they lost to Oklahoma State and the ramifications of all of those things running through the Big 12 and how that impacts us in the SEC. I wanted to talk about LSU getting clubbed to death by Alabama, which we will still talk about. But I cannot talk about that story, those stories, Tennessee beating South Carolina in a thriller. Joshua Dobbs looks amazing. All of those stories are great. They're cool, okay? They're fun to talk about, but the fun stuff is not to get on top of the not-so-fun stuff. So we're going to talk about race. We're going to talk about race relations, especially as it pertains to the South. The University of Missouri is in the SEC, so we are not dodging this one. This is happening, okay? It's just happening. I want to talk about it, so we're talking about it because it's something that we have to talk about. Okay, you want to talk about the scores and the stats and the numbers and the big plays. That stuff's dessert. Okay, you're going to have to eat the green beans first. That's just how this is going to work, because this is what I think sports ought to be for. That you had the great players and great athletes of the past, and one thing that they were able to use their platforms for, they realized as athletes that they had higher visibility than most people, that when you do a thing that people sit down and watch, you just have higher visibility. So it's not just athletes, it's musicians, it's actors, it's actresses. When you have a higher visibility than other people, there is a level of responsibility that comes with the power of visibility. And Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Walter Payton used their visibility for something greater than themselves, for causes that were bigger than them. And the University of Missouri football team, the 30 guys that decided that they were not going to participate in football activities and use their visibility to get ESPN and the New York Times and Huffington Post to finally cover a story that had been happening on that campus for months. Okay, there's a graduate student at the University of Missouri was going on a hunger strike. And I was talking to Russell before I came on. Hunger strikes don't do what they used to. Hunger strikes, when someone went on a hunger strike, people used to care. Like, here's a guy that is so wrapped up in his cause that he is refusing to eat on purpose for his cause. This guy's been on a hunger strike for a month. Graduate student Jonathan Butler has been on a hunger strike for a month. And I had not heard about this story until this morning when the football team got involved, which is sad in and of itself, but at least the football team got involved and the coach stood behind them and they did something or tried to do something bigger than themselves. And these are college football players. They don't have that much power. They have power, and on their campus, they have extra influence that other students don't get to have. But outside of that campus, that's not a lot of power. If these athletes could have had this power before, if the power that they had was so prevalent, they should get paid. They would have organized this to get paid by now. Okay, it's not that much power. They usually do not have that much power. But here's a cause that they had, and they used their relatively high amount of power compared to the rest of the other students on campus to let something be known, to get something out there that America was not paying paying attention to, which is that the University of Missouri, if you are a student there, not the most welcoming place if you're a black student or if you're a Jewish student. If you're a minority student, doesn't feel that welcome to you. The use of racial slurs have been increasing steadily over the past year at that campus. And I read a very, very great article about just the recent history of things that have happened going all the way back to the summer that just kind of broke down all of the things that have been happening on that campus, starting with a few racial slurs. One example of someone drawing a swastika on a student resident building in human feces. This stuff is ridiculous. And nobody was paying attention until the football team got involved. If you have a platform, you need to use it. And that's why, look, I want to bypass this too. This is not an easy conversation to have. Race conversation never is an easy conversation to have. Okay, it's not fun, but it is necessary. You can't stick your head in the sand and ignore it, and you shouldn't. Okay, that this happened at the University of Missouri, that we live in the South. We have a history of this in this region of the country. And if we want people to start seeing us advance and we want people to start respecting the South for the forward progress that actually is being made down here, we need to have these conversations. So we can't pretend that it doesn't happen. We can't pretend this doesn't happen. Okay, and I don't want to be the guy that kills everybody's vibes. We could talk about Peyton Manning and how he lost his duel with Andrew Luck this Sunday, and we will. But first, we need to talk about this. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. And on this show, I try very often not to get up on soapboxes. I do not succeed as often as many people would like. But here's the thing. We talked about it last week, and I played the soundbite for you of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar saying of Michael Jordan that Michael Jordan chose commerce over social responsibility. He chose commerce over conscience. Okay, I'll play that soundbite for you right here. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in an interview with NPR in New York talking about Michael Jordan.
You can't be afraid of losing shoe sales if you're worried about your civil and human rights. You can't be worried about that. It's just the way it is. He took commerce over conscience. That's unfortunate for him, but he's got to live with it.
And the University of Missouri student athletes decided that this is something that they didn't want to live with, that they had a responsibility, and they used it. And I think more power to them. Okay, that the president of the university, Tim Wolfe, had resigned. Okay, and he resigned, and it seems a little too late in this regard, because the stuff that the students had been bothering him about, the student movement, the protest movement called Concerned Student 1950. 1950, of course, was referring to the year that the University of Missouri was integrated racially. They addressed him on a number of occasions, and he either refused to talk about it or he gave answers that seemed like he didn't care. And we've got Mr. Judd calling on the line, no doubt, to talk about this, because we've talked about this off the air. Mr. Judd, you're on the air.
Hey, Keon, you're doing an excellent job, but I would like to correct you on one thing you said. Missouri is not a southern state. So more of a border state, if anything else, but they're not a southern state. And I think that is important. But your other points, man, you're knocking it out of the ballpark. You're doing a great job. Preach on, brother.
All right. Well, that's thank you, Mr. Judd. Thank you for that, I guess. Mr. Judd of the Mr. Judd Show, and also opens up in the morning at 7 o'clock with Confederate Mike. If you want to catch that morning show, it is hilarious. I don't hear it very often because I'm also not conscious at 7 in the morning very often. That's just the way that I roll on that one. But I do try and catch the show on YouTube. It streams, and then it is saved there. So you can search Hot News Talk Radio. Check that show out. I highly recommend it if you want to laugh and if you want the feeling of your side splitting open because of that laughter. But in regards to Missouri not necessarily being a southern state, I mean, it's on the fringes of it. And I think when it comes to how people perceive the South, I feel like Missouri kind of falls in it, if not just because of at least the recent events with Michael Brown and the shooting that happened there, and then of course the riots in Ferguson. Those things are, at least to say the least, disturbing. That no matter what you think about Michael Brown or whether or not he deserved to what ended up happening to him with that police officer, the issue is that there is a topic about race and race relations in that state, and that technically they play in the Southeastern Conference of Football, which is why this story is at least newsworthy to me and should be newsworthy to everyone else. Because one of the questions that I have to ask about this, and I will try and explore this idea in later segments today, what if this happened at a Tennessee? University of Tennessee. What if this happened in Knoxville? What if this did happen in Alabama or Auburn or Georgia? Some places that are closer to us here. What if this did happen there? Would those players threaten to walk out? And here's the thing, right? Because Missouri is bad at football this season. They're occasionally good, okay? And especially the last couple of seasons, they have surprised people. But they've not been good this season. They're 4-5. What if Missouri were Alabama and you only have one loss? Do those players try and take that stand then? Because what the players at Missouri did, even if that team is 4-5, took an extraordinary amount of courage to do, because their scholarships could have been revoked. Okay, what if instead of resigning, the president fires Gary Pinkel, the head coach, and then says to all those players, you know what? You're not practicing. You're not playing in the game. Your scholarship is done. This could have gone another way. What they chose to do took courage. But if the team were 8-1, that would have taken more courage, because now you turn the fans against you. The fans are like, look, we can make a bowl game. We can make a championship run here. If it had happened at Alabama, what do you think then? If this had happened at an Alabama or an LSU or Tennessee, that we know that Tennessee's had a rough season so far, and the easier part of their schedule is in the second half of this season, and you're just trying to collect some wins to see if you can make a bowl game, to be bowl eligible. And then all of a sudden, your students, 30 players, because you can't play missing 30 players. 30 players decide we have to take a stand on an important issue, an issue that is important to us. And by the way, what takes even more courage is that locker room was divided. Not all of those students agreed. Some of them were upset. They didn't think that was right. They did not think that was the correct thing to do. To not participate in football activities, to threaten to not play in the game. And I like that they got support from their head coach. And I want to break down the ramifications of this. And I really want to get one of the student reporters from the Columbia Missourian on to talk about this. I'd really like their insight. I'm going to try and track one of them down either this afternoon or make someone's life miserable in the morning tomorrow. Something. Because I want to talk about this with someone on the campus that's got more information than I have. We'll be talking more about the Missouri situation and get into a little bit of scores right here on Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I love my Flex loan from Advance Financial. I needed cash, I needed it fast, and I didn't want to get a payday loan. My Flex loan from Advance Financial is not a payday loan. It's a line of credit. I only pay for the cash I need, and I only pay for the time that I need it. There's no lump sum payment. My Advance Financial Flex loan is an open line of credit, and I can get cash anytime I need it.
Visit one of our 24/7 locations and get the cash you need today. Advance Financial. Welcome.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
President Obama makes Jimmy Carter look like Napoleon Bonaparte. We have a president that leads from behind, and when America doesn't lead, bad things happen.
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. Mark your calendars right now, because my guest this week is none other than one of the leading GOP presidential contenders, neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson. Don't miss a revealing conversation with candidate Ben Carson this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Expect cloudy, wet, and cool weather out there through the afternoon, with a few lingering showers continuing to roll through. Highs into the lower to middle 50s. Tonight, some late fog, but a little drier, lows near 50. For Tuesday, becoming partly sunny, milder, highs near 65, and more sunshine around 70 Wednesday. Quality, knowledge, skill, and value. That's Napa Know-How. With more than 400,000 quality parts and 85 years of experience, they've got the know-how to find the right parts you need at Napa Auto Parts. And I'm 1412 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Wolfe.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
This is Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We're talking about Missouri and the situation there, and the president of the university, Tim Wolfe, has resigned today after a lot of pressure from the student body, a lot of the Black organizations on campus, as well as the football team, and one student, Jonathan Butler, who went on a hunger strike, has not eaten this month. So congratulations to Mr. Butler, who, if you heard the report at the top of the hour, said that he feels empowered and of course, hungry. I can imagine. He was not taking any multivitamins. He was not having any food of any sort. He was simply drinking water. He said that he ached all over, that he was incredibly hungry, and that he had an ongoing headache. But of course, who wouldn't? After not eating this month. And so the thing is, here's a student at a school believing firmly in what he believes and very, very resolute in this decision, to the point where he decided not to eat food, and nobody was reporting this story. Today, ESPN is all over that campus. And that is the power that sports has. And I think it has it not for any special reason, not for any particular reason, except that it is a high visibility thing. It is just a thing that a lot of people see. Okay, it's something that a lot of people see, and because of that, there's a lot of money involved, and there's a lot of politics involved, and the students were able to use that leverage to their advantage to advance a cause that is incredibly important. That I do want to talk about the games from Saturday and Sunday, and I wanted to start a benchmark here on the show called the Saturday-Sunday Soundboard, where I cut up bits of audio of things that happened that I thought were interesting or that sounded cool or whatever, and we'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow, but usually I wanted this to be a Monday thing. You open the show with the thing, you know, and there was a lot of other audio that I thought was interesting. I wanted to compare Stephen A. Smith to a lot of villains in movies because I think that that's hilarious. I wanted to make fun of drunk Johnny Gomes during the Royals victory parade and use that audio incessantly. I wanted to use Kirk Cousins some more to talk about the Redskins being stomped to death by the New England Patriots. And those things can happen tomorrow. I can put that off until tomorrow because today is a different kind of day. I will talk about the games, okay? I mean, Alabama, LSU, that was huge what happened there. But when you have the opportunity to use a platform, and I am fortunate enough to be in a position where I am standing in front of a microphone and have some kind of platform, however it is taken, and to whomever I am speaking to just be able to say that when there's politics entering your sports, or when there's race relations entering your sports, I ask that you not duck your head and cover, that you don't stick your head in the sand, that you don't look away from the real life football happening and look to your fantasy football team. Pay attention to what's happening here, because this is how advances in society get made. Okay, that you end up with a guy like Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is not going to be the guy with the reputation that he has if the time that he spent not fighting didn't happen. Muhammad Ali wasted a good chunk of the prime of his career in prison because he would not go to war in Vietnam. It was not a war that he believed was a correct war. He did not like it. He didn't think that the U.S. should be there subjecting themselves on other peoples, and he did not want to go to war, and they tossed him in jail, and he didn't fight for a good chunk of his career. Known as one of the greatest boxers that ever lived, but what was more important for Muhammad Ali and why he is as great as he is known to be is the time that he spent not fighting in a prison. Standing up for what he believed in. Because he understood. Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar called out Michael Jordan because Michael Jordan refused to do those things. And Michael Jordan is the interesting case because Michael Jordan is a guy whose fame and specifically whose shoes are such a large part of our pop culture and such a large part of our society that his shoes are actually involved in some of the causes that maybe he might want to be combating. That people who cannot afford his shoes end up fighting each other for his shoes and killing each other for his shoes, and the situations that they're in, Michael Jordan couldn't care less about it. Michael Jordan cares if you buy sneakers. Okay, Michael Jordan doesn't care if you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, if you're a libertarian, if you're an anarchist, if you're a monarchist. Michael Jordan likes people who buy his shoes. And that's sad, and he's going to have to live with that. But you have 30 students at the University of Missouri who decided that, you know what? We're not going to live with that. These students aren't famous. I haven't heard any one of them be named. Not one. And I've been reading reports on this all morning. There are a few students who tweeted about it, but ultimately, it's not that they're famous, but they understand if we don't play against BYU on Saturday, that's going to cost the school a lot of money. Okay, now the only issue that I have with this, and this is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose, talking about Missouri, the Missouri football team that decided that they were going to join in on Jonathan Butler's hunger strike by not participating in football activities until President Tim Wolfe had resigned, and now he has. And I don't know what change that they were necessarily looking for. That's the issue that I have with this. I don't know what change necessarily this brought about. And I worry about that because Mr. Judd and I were talking before the show. We don't know what the next guy is going to be like. The next guy could be worse. Tim Wolfe was inactive. He was not doing anything. The students are telling you people are getting bold with the racial slurs that they're calling me, and Tim Wolfe is not doing anything. Someone drew a swastika on the student residence in human feces. Tim Wolfe's not doing anything. He's talking about doing things, but he's not actually doing things. And for them, that's enough for you to have to go. You know, and you know what? It's interesting because the Los Angeles Clippers, remember the whole Donald Sterling thing, had an openly racist owner. Donald Sterling was openly racist for years, and the Clippers are making tons of money. They never stopped playing basketball. They were in the playoffs. You know, they were going to wear the black shirts in solidarity. They weren't going to come out for the national anthem and all those things, but they weren't going to not play basketball. And they're millionaires. I'm talking about Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. Here's some student athletes. They don't get paid to play football, doing an absolutely courageous thing. That takes courage. What they did. It takes a lot of courage because football is the thing that you came to this school to do, and you could have had your scholarship rescinded like that. And instead, because you put your neck out there, you exacted a kind of change. Now, what I want to know is what kind of change are they looking for? Because they never specified. You talk about the institutional racism of the things happening on that campus. And one of the things that they did get mad about at Tim Wolfe about is that they asked Tim Wolfe, and there's a really grainy, hard to listen to video on Twitter if you want to find it, but they asked Tim Wolfe, Tim, what are you doing about the institutional racism at this campus? To which Tim Wolfe responds, I have an answer and you're not going to like it. You know, he said, I have an answer and it's the wrong answer. And they ask him again, and he says, I have an answer, and it's the wrong answer. And to me, if that's the thing you're going to stand behind, then don't give up the answer. If you know that that answer is the wrong answer, that the answer that nobody wants to hear, and you're going to keep saying that, just go ahead and keep saying that. But no, Tim Wolfe finally gives the answer, and the answer is institutional racism is because you don't feel like things on the campus are equal. And then a student said, "Are you blaming us? Are you actually blaming the students?" And he walked away. Didn't look like he cared. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether or not he cared. That I can't tell you. I'm not inside the mind of Tim Wolfe. But it did not look like he cared. And if the student body is perceiving that he doesn't care, there's a reason why people feel so emboldened to be racist towards us on this campus. There's a culture here. And we've talked about this many times because that is, it's the same thing. I talk about it in sports because all sports does is mimic actual life. That's all that it does. It's a tiny mirror of your actual life. It holds up the mirror to you and says, this is what you look like. This is what's silly about you. That's all it does. We talked about Steve Sarkisian earlier in the season. And Chip Kelly being arrogant. And coaches bring in cultures. They're leaders. All leaders do. They bring in a culture. And the students were not satisfied with the culture at the University of Missouri. Culture comes from the top down. Okay? It's why the Raiders were terrible for years and years and years. It's why the Redskins are awful and they're never going to win anything as long as Dan Snyder is the owner of that football team, because culture comes from the top down. You can't overcome bad leadership no matter how hard you try. You can get lucky, but more often than not, bad leadership, you can't overcome it. As the saying goes, crap rolls downhill. If there's a culture whereby people feel like it's okay to say the N-word to other students on campus and they're just cool with it, and that's just fine, that's because there's a culture there that says that this is okay. And I don't know how you fix it. I don't think the students at the school knew how to fix it either, but they knew one thing. You got to change the guy at the top. Because he's the one that brings in the culture. He may not be a racist. Tim Wolfe is not a racist. I don't get that from any of the things that he said. But he did seem passive and inactive and allowed a racist culture to continue to exist. You're the leader. Everybody follows you. Sorry, buddy. You either help to fix this or you got to go. And the students felt so strongly about that, they protested him at a number of places, at a function that he was speaking at his car. He refused to speak to them in one location, and the other one is that's the quote that I had where he basically sounded like he was blaming the students. Not that I don't even think he was. I just think he worded that so wrongly and so poorly. The students are going to take this as you don't care. And it's your job as president to look like you care and act like you care and actually care. All three of those things, they all matter. You have to. You don't have a choice. Public relations, that's part of your job. And he didn't fulfill that very well at all. And I don't know, again, necessarily what the students are looking for. When you say institutional racism, you have to define it. It's got a look. It's got a flavor. It's got a feel to it. You have to figure out what it is that looks like. And they have not necessarily done so. So I don't know exactly what it is that they're expecting to change. But changing the guy at the top, that doesn't hurt at all. That doesn't hurt at all. You have to. And when you talk about the Tennessee Titans and they're not winning football games, okay? They're not winning football games. I don't know what fixes this. You look at that and you're like, I don't know why they're losing so much, but I do know one thing. You got to switch out the guy at the top. So they went after Ken Wisenhunt and they fired him. There's a culture of losing in this building. We don't know what causes it. You're not helping. And you're the leader. You're the one who's accountable for what everyone around here thinks. If we think losing is okay, it's because the leader is allowing us to think that losing is okay. Whether or not you thought that that was just. We'll talk about this a little bit more, and we'll run through the scores a little bit here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Social media, we're on that. Hot News Talk Radio on Facebook, at Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter. Download the TuneIn app and follow us anywhere at any time. AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
What, Jeff, do you think is the most significant thing
on
in terms of football judgment, people in the room wanting to watch the teams on tape as opposed to looking at their numbers? What was the most influential thing in football judgment?
Well, if I understand your question, I think it's the balance of the team. You know, we have teams that are just one-sided offensive teams or one-sided really strong defensive teams. So that combination of offense and defense, and then, you know, how they've played offensively and defensively in those games. So sometimes that's probably the hardest thing to judge, is some teams that have very explosive offenses, but we haven't seen their defenses tested.
Clemson lived up to the hype this weekend. I mean, offensively and defensively, they looked solid in their victory over Florida State. TCU, not so much. TCU got canned by Oklahoma State. And I mean absolutely shellacked, pushed around. Mason Rudolph throws 5 touchdowns. Trayvon Boykin, the guy who I thought could win the Heisman. And I after a performance like that, I don't know how you give it to him. I really don't know how you give it to him. I thought Trayvon Boykin could win the Heisman. He looks like a video game character. He plays like a video game character. He jumped over a guy. He front flipped a guy, okay, in a game. Like, he just, there's the end zone. There's you. I'm jumping over you, and I'm front flipping you. I mean, that's just how that happens. He does stuff like that. And to me, he looks like the best college football player. He looks like the best overall college football player. But to this point, TCU hasn't really played anybody. The only team so far that they've played with a winning record was Oklahoma State, who pounded them into the dust. That defense looked anemic. Trayvon Boykin threw 4 interceptions. I don't know what to tell you about that team except to say that they're finished. I don't know this with absolute certainty. The way the rest of the Big 12 has to shake out now, Oklahoma State has to lose some. Baylor's going to have to lose some. Baylor's probably going to have to lose 1 to 2 TCU. TCU's going to have to probably beat up everybody else from here on out to have a shot. So let me not say that they're finished. They're on life support, though. And what that means, of course, is the more the Big 12 struggles, in fact, the more than any of these other conferences struggle, the better that looks for the SEC getting 2 teams into the playoff. It's not likely. I don't think that the committee likes to do that, but 1-loss teams, LSU and Alabama. Okay, and look, They squared off. Derrick Henry looked amazing. Leonard Fournette finally, for the first time this season, looked human. Okay, because my theory, which I still stand by, is that Leonard Fournette is a dude that they just cooked up in a lab somewhere. The committee is looking at offense and defense, watching the tape, giving the eye test to see who is the best team. Not necessarily your record. TCU, if they had lost by a few points to Oklahoma State, we're not talking about the sky falling for them. But they got clubbed. I mean, they just got knocked out. And I don't know if I've seen a team that highly touted look that bad in a while. And I knew that Oklahoma State was capable of beating TCU. I did not think that Oklahoma State was capable of pushing TCU around the way that they did, especially since TCU, a really, like, usually a solid defensive unit, at least for a Big 12 school for sure, and definitely because Gary Patterson is a guy that likes defense. I mean, he's a defensive-minded coach. He's like, in the Big 12, you've got to score lots of points or you lose. But he's a defensive-minded guy. This is what a Gary Patterson defense is supposed to look like. You don't score a lot of points. He scores a lot of points, and specifically that defense scores a lot of points. And they didn't look very good at all. They got burned on a number of plays. There were 2 touchdowns. The first 2 touchdowns thrown by Mason Rudolph, and I forget the name of the receiver. They look like identical plays. Just man-to-man, one-on-one on the outside, and he is scorching the TCU defender that is there. I mean, he just ran right past him like his feet were caught in cement. That's incredible to me. Oklahoma State did an impression of TCU to TCU. They did TCU to TCU. It's like being you ever watch Key and Peele and Jordan Peele, one of the actors, he does this impression of Obama. He dresses up like Obama, and then one day he met Obama as Obama, like real life Barack Obama. It was funny. You got to find it on the internet if you can. Like they cracked me up. They really did. But here's the thing. It's like that you do your impression of Obama to Obama, and you probably come off more like him than he does. That's what happened. Oklahoma State did their best impression of TCU to TCU and looked more like TCU than TCU did. And that shakes up the whole thing. If these other Big 12 schools don't win out, I don't see why an LSU and an Alabama shouldn't end up in the playoff. Because the quality of their overall schedule. Now, things get a little easier for both LSU and Alabama coming down the stretch. But when you consider the offense and defense of both of these schools, but I did not expect LSU to have this much trouble scoring against Alabama. And certainly the way that Derrick Henry was running, I didn't expect them to have that much trouble stopping him. I mean, for goodness sakes, you have to stop Leonard Fournette in practice. And Derrick Henry was a lot of people's dark horse for the Heisman. You might argue that he's the front runner now. Fournette had a 31-yard game against Alabama. And look, that's hard to come back from, but there's a lot of guys that have had low yardage games and come back from it. Let me pull that up here for you. A lot of guys have had low yardage games and come back from it before to win the Heisman. So it's not impossible. It's probably easier for a running back from that standpoint to come back from a game like that. Because if you're a quarterback, you're Trayvon Boykin, you throw those 4 interceptions, forget about it, buddy. Like 4 interceptions. He threw a ton of yards because he is Boykin. Like he hasn't suddenly become the worst quarterback ever. I'm not going to flip-flop like that. Like my brother's got a joke about me, which is that I am the ultimate bandwagon guy. When I get on a bandwagon, I don't get off the bandwagon. I'm the last person off of any bandwagon. I get off the bandwagon when the wheels fall off the cart and the horse dies. So I'm still backing my boy Fournette, or Boykin rather. But Fournette can come back from this. It's possible. It's easier to do. Again, interceptions. It's not like he had 4 fumbles. Interceptions are bad. It's not like Trayvon Boykin came out, he threw for 10 yards, and that was that. He just had a low yardage game. He specifically would be putting his team in jeopardy with the interceptions that he threw, and he threw a ton. He threw a ton of interceptions. Okay, and I'm still working on getting this series of stats up here for you. The Heisman situation here is this. Okay, here's a list of Heisman winning running backs and their low yardage games. Here's some names you might recognize. Ready? Herschel Walker, 20 yards against Clemson. Mark Ingram, 30 against Auburn. Leonard Fournette, this past Saturday, had 31 against Alabama. Ernie Davis had 35 against West Virginia. Billy Sims, 36 against West Virginia. Charles White, 39 against Texas Tech. Mike Garrett, 43 against Kansas State. Archie Griffin, 46 against Michigan. Bo Jackson, 48 against Florida. And Reggie Bush, 51 against Washington. Okay, now, to be clear, Herschel Walker, Ernie Davis, Billy Sims, and Charles White and Mike Garrett, all of those low yardage games came in week 1 through 3, while everyone else was week 7 and beyond. Okay, Leonard Fournette, losing that game might be hard on him as well, but the fact that he had a low yardage game does not spell doom for his Heisman Trophy winning chances. But I still think he's the front runner there. A lot of people might move Henry ahead of him now. I still think Fournette is the front runner there. LSU's got an amazing offensive line. Alabama's offensive line is better. And Alabama's defense, I think, it may possibly be better than LSU's ultimately. And so slowing down Leonard Fournette, easier for Alabama because they have a bit more talent than LSU does. But Leonard Fournette's not done. He's not done. If he continues stomping on people, this is just a blip in the radar for his whole season. I think Fournette ought to still win it. I would knock Boykin out of the top 3, though. I think you would have to. If that was your top 3. My top 3 to that moment was Boykin, Fournette, Henry. I'm going to have to bump Boykin out, probably move Ezekiel Elliott in from Ohio State. So there's that ramification of Alabama and LSU, which, for those of you interested in the Alabama Crimson Tide, roll Tide roll. I'm not going to play the whole song, though, because I did that last week on Monday. For every segment coming in and out, I played both of the songs. They're long. I played them for the bumper music, and I learned my lesson that those songs are very, very long. Okay, they're good songs, but they're very long. They're very long. But I didn't see that coming at all. 30-16 is the score. Alabama over LSU. I want to talk about the Missouri situation here. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. It is a cloudy day, Chattanooga, Tennessee. The roads are wet. Please drive safely as we're wrapping up the show here. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about this case, because here's something that might get lost in all of this. And I think Mr. Judd, again, we talked about this a little bit before I came on the air. Mr. Judd made a great point about the power that the students are having, that they got a president of their university fired. They did not think that he was doing a good job at his job, and they got him fired. This is the thing that student athletes don't have that much power. But they do have a lot of power collectively. The more of them there are. Football makes a lot of money, which means if the students refuse to play football collectively, they have a lot of power. No individual student has enough power to change the way the system works. But they all have a lot of power together. Now, they're not allowed to collectively unionize, which is what some students at Northwestern wanted earlier in the summer, actually, off season. They wanted to unionize and be able to say, look, we demand more pay. Or in this particular instance, more pay is any pay at all. Okay, that you're giving me a scholarship, you're giving me a free education, but you know what? You're making millions and billions of dollars, and I'm breaking my hands, I'm getting concussions, I'm breaking my knees, I'm hurting my back. I demand any payment at all for this thing that I do for you. Players have a lot of power here. 30 players got the entire nation to look at Jonathan Butler and his hunger strike. 30 players helped to get a university president fired. This guy has been ineffective. Tim Wolfe. Okay, he's not, again, I don't think he's a racist. I don't think he's a bad person, but he had been ineffective for months. This goes all the way back to last semester, the spring semester. Students have been talking and complaining to the faculty about racial slurs and how more emboldened those racial slurs are and how much more emboldened the people making those slurs are. And nothing happened. 30 players helped expedite that process a little bit. A lot of faculty and staff walked out. 20 walked out. But they didn't do that until the players stepped up. Which, again, a lot of great moral fiber that those players are showing. But that is incredible. And hopefully, the players realize what kind of power they have. Not to go around getting presidents of schools fired willy-nilly, but they're not getting compensated for their work. Not properly. And they can do something about it. Thanks for listening today. This is Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. I'll see you in 23 hours.
Expect cloudy, wet, and cool weather out there through the afternoon with a few lingering showers continuing to roll through. Highs into the lower to middle 50s. Tonight, some late fog, but a little drier, lows near 50. For Tuesday, becoming partly sunny, milder, highs near 65, and more sunshine around 70 Wednesday. Quality knowledge.